So we've had 3 debates now. Sky News, behind a paywall sadly, but on Sky News with voters. Then we had the Channel 9 one, which was Fight Club. And then we had the Channel 7 one, the final one, Showdown, as they used the dramatic music, and it was all very exciting. And I think if you look at the results, because of course undecided voters are polled in all different ways by these 3 debates, Anthony Albanese won all 3 of them based on the results of those undecided voters. He really needed to win that last one too, I think, to maintain his momentum and sort of the sense of the lead he has. And he really needed to be able to clarify some of those questions around the wages issue. Now, I don't know how much clarity they've provided, because they haven't been clear about what the exact submission will look like to the Fair Work Commission. But what they have done, and I think this is the real story, Joe, is that they've kept the wages issue front and centre. Now, the Coalition will say that Anthony Albanese has been loose, that he went too far when he said absolutely to our reporter about 5.1% being the amount that the minimum wage should increase. But my take on this is that, yes, you can criticise the way that he's handled this, but because the party has largely backed him in, even if, you know, they weren't expecting to go as far as they did on the 5.1%, they are talking about wages. Guess what, Joe? They want to talk about wages. This is what they want to talk about. This is actually their entire strategy. They want to talk about wages because the Labor campaign is premised on the idea that wages have not been going up. They do not stand up and match the cost of living. And so I don't know if it's as much a blunder as is being made out, because they're fighting on their territory.
And what of this argument that the Prime Minister says that Anthony Albanese it's a bit of a con, with Anthony Albanese saying he can influence wages and he hasn't got a magic pen, and Anthony Albanese arguing that governments can actually have an impact on what's happening with wages?
I think on this, the Prime Minister's been inconsistent. So yes, he kept saying, and I wrote it down because it is inconsistent, and I pressed the Treasurer on this today. In my interview with him on RM Breakfast. He says that the magic pen line that was used all of last week, that Anthony Albanese doesn't have a magic pen, and there was, I actually think, a sense of truth to that. Anthony Albanese, if he became Prime Minister, wouldn't be able to set wages for the country. We have the Fair Work Commission that does that. So over-promising in relation to wages should be scrutinised. The Prime Minister, though, now that Labor has nominated the 5.1% and that Anthony Albanese has been more explicit, has been attacking Anthony Albanese for being a loose unit. That's the language he's used. And that he's going to wreck the economy, that he's going to put pressure on interest rates and inflation by doing this. You can't have it both ways, though. You can't say that he doesn't have any power, and then apparently he has so much power that he's going to create this spiral and this Armageddon in the economy. But the Prime Minister has pivoted on this for a very specific reason, which is that he wants to paint Anthony Albanese as an economic wrecker. But I think the role of journalists is to kind of look at the different statements and to point out the inconsistencies. You cannot have both. You cannot say that there's no magic pen and then imply that there's a magic pen. You ask me the very good question, how much influence do governments have? I'm interested in that, really, because the Fair Work Commission makes the determination. I put that to the business leader I spoke to, the ACCI head, today on my panel, and he said they do have an influence, and he also backed Labor's right to put a price tag on it. And I think history matters. If you look at history, governments have put an amount on it before. This idea that you have to stay on the fence is not true. The Howard government often put what they thought was the right amount, more modest than what the unions were calling for, on the minimum wage. There is a history of this, and so Labor has made a determination, and they haven't been clear about when they get into government exactly what that price tag will look like now, but they generally say it should keep up with inflation, this 5.1%. The government says, and the Treasurer has stuck by this today in my interview with him, that they don't believe that that's the right strategy to put a price tag or an amount on it. But it does provide a real point of difference in the last days of this campaign about, you know, who you want to back. Now, I think that all of this should be weighed up. The Fair Work Commission is the ultimate arbiter on this. If Labor's claim was too ambitious, they would weigh that up looking at the economic conditions. That is actually their job. And so you'd hope that a fair and independent and robust Fair Work Commission would make the right judgment for the economy at the right time.
Okay, now just on to another issue. What's the latest with this candidate, the Liberal candidate for the seat of Warringah in Sydney?
This is really interesting. So there was an article written by Nikki Sava, who's a columnist who has previously worked for Peter Costello and John Howard, now is a Fairfax or 9 newspapers columnist. I should get with the current sort of ownership regimes. And she's written a column saying that the Katherine Davey, the very controversial candidate for Warringah, who has very, very offensive views that she's said and now backed in again on transgender people, describing it as mutilation. That's the history here. A very offensive word that she backed in again. Prime Minister says he doesn't believe that that's the language, but has stood by her. The allegation has been made, based on her sources by Nikki Sava, that the Prime Minister's office is running Katherine Davey's campaign, which is a pretty controversial thing if that were to be the case. Prime Minister's office denies it. Okay, they deny it. Nikki Sava's standing by it, and Josh Frydenberg, who's, you know, he described himself as a moderate, he says, on many issues, and the Treasurer, and would like, I think, to be the Prime Minister one day. Perhaps the opposition leader if he keeps his seat and they don't win, let's see. But he says that he doesn't think it's being run out of the Prime Minister's office, so he's backed in the Prime Minister's view. But when asked by me, and I really did press him on this, what does he think of the handling of this issue? He says he would use different language if he was Prime Minister than the current Prime Minister. Because I said, what would you do if you were Prime Minister? Would you have let this happen? He would have himself used different language than the Prime Minister. He denounced Katherine Davey again. And so what I heard there very strongly is big product differentiation between Josh Frydenberg and the Prime Minister on this issue.
And would he have pre-selected her in the first place?
I doubt it.